About respiration. In my previous video, we have learned how food is broken down into simpler forms like glucose. In my upcoming videos, we'll see that how energy is released by the process of breathing for performing various activities. Now let's see what is breathing. It is simply the exchange of gases between our body and atmosphere and is also known as respiration. So to begin with, different group of organisms have different mechanism for breathing depending mainly on their habitat and level of organization. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelenterate, flatworms exchange gases simply by diffusion over their entire body. Aquatic animals like arthropods or mollusks use gills to breathe, whereas vascularized bags called lungs are used by the terrestrial animals like birds, mammals, amphibians, etc. Now let's move to our main topic, which is human respiratory system. In human respiratory system, it starts from nostril. An external opening opens above the upper lip. It leads to the nasal chamber through the nasal passage. The nasal passage opens into the pharynx. Pharynx is a common passage for both food and air. Moving further, pharynx leads to another region called larynx. Larynx is a cartilaginous box which helps in sound production. So it is also known as sound box. During swallowing, glottis can be covered into a thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis to prevent the entry of food into the larynx. Or you can say that epiglottis is in the midsection of trachea and esophagus. Now let's talk about trachea. Trachea is a straight tube extended up to the mid-thoracic cavity, which is divided at the level of 5th thoracic vertebrae. This means that trachea is extended to the mid-thoracic cavity and it divides into left and right pulmonary bronchi singular and bronchus plural. Each bronchi undergoes repetitive division to form the secondary and tertiary bronchi and bronchioles, ending up in a very thin terminal bronchioles. I.e., that means first we have trachea, then we have bronchi, which is primary bronchi. Primary bronchi further divides into secondary and tertiary bronchi and intestinal bronchioles. These all means trachea, primary, secondary and tertiary bronchi including bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous C-shaped rings. Each terminal bronchi give rise to a number of very thin irregular walled and vascularized bag-like structure called alveoli. The division from the trachea ends here. It is a bunch-like structure. The branching network of bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli comprises of lungs. Now let's talk about membranes of lungs. We have two lungs which are covered by a double-layered pleura. This is the name of the membrane, pleura, with pleural fluid between them. It reduces the friction on the surface of lung. And the outer pleural membrane is in close contact with the thoracic cavity, that means the abdominal region, and the inner pleural membrane is in contact with the pulmonary cavity. Now let's talk about two different criteria in the respiratory system. The part starting with the external nostril up to the terminal bronchiole consists of conducting part. This conducting part has some utilizations like it removes foreign particles, humidify the air which enters it, and also brings air to the body temperature or heats the air a bit. Now we come to our second part, which is alveoli and their ducts, which forms the respiratory or the exchange part of the respiratory system. This is the site of actual diffusion between O2 and CO2. Now see how inhalation and exhalation actually occur. The lungs is situated in thoracic chamber, which is an airtight chamber. The thoracic chamber is formed dorsally by the vertebral column and ventrally by the sternum or breastbone, laterally by the ribs, and on the lower side it is covered by dome-shaped diaphragm. Anatomical setup of lungs in thoracic cavity is such that any change in the thoracic cavity will be reflected on lungs or pulmonary cavity. That means if we want to alter the size of lungs, we only need to change the shape of thoracic cavity. That was all for this video. If you like this video, consider subscribing.